the whole story of forfeiture. We became friendly with this guy. Steve, I forgot his name. He trained the original. He's like one of the original officers that did the training for forfeiture for the Michigan State Police when it first started rolling out. And he said at that time, this could be a great tool for law enforcement, or it will be your worst enemy. And he said the lazy police officer will abuse the shit out of this law because if you're not investigating the individual, the property, pulling tax returns before the search warrant, and when you get inside of the house, everything looks like drug proceeds. How could you delineate?
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
You're an amazing counselor in DUI law. I had to work on a federal registry to recalculate all the nation's DUI, DUID laws or whatnot for the National Highway Transit Safety Commission. The smell of cannabis cannot be distinguished between burnt or fresh, right? But when you go to a car, how are you going to now get the ingress to say, let me check to see if you have a legal 10 grams, or let me check to see if you actually had a card? They had to have a prompt, right? Was it that I seen a small speck of green here, or seen some small
green tongue? Green tongue. You ever heard that one?
Right.
The green tongue? Yeah.
I've never heard of the green tongue.
I've never seen that in the police.
I never heard of the green tongue.
Never seen that in the police before.
He said that he saw somebody with a
tongue.
green tongue.
Yeah. Wow.
From smoking weed.
Wow.
So he must have been smoking weed.
and that's a key issue, when you go up to a facility and you say, okay, it's a lawful business in some jurisdictions or not, and you're aware of that, you're not aware of that as a police officer. That means you have a duty. A derelict of that duty is malfeasance, right? You have a duty to know more if you know that you have some legal established businesses, especially before you put guns in people's mouth. Right?
And you're a law enforcement agency, which means you better know the laws that you are paid to enforce.
Aren't they protected though by the pen of the magistrate? They can do no harm. Good faith. I didn't know. I just gave it to the magistrate. He's the one that signed the.
They can't avail themselves of that because they didn't get a search warrant.
This case did not have a search warrant?
No.
it didn't.
What was the police unit? Do y'all have regional narcotics, multi-jurisdictional
But it's illegal. It's based on illegal.
Okay. Yeah, we're thinking about another case.
Yeah. We have another case where they didn't get search warrants.
Yeah, and that was
that's
the case we were just talking about.
In this matter, if you get a search warrant based on pretenses like it just has to be something going on illegal there, and that information is false, then how is that search warrant valid? Fruit of the poisonous tree.
That's the exception to the good faith of using a warrant.
Right.
The affidavit better show good faith. The affidavit that you use to get the warrant better be free of false statements, free of assumptions and omissions.
And demonstrate probable cause.
In this case, it wasn't.
Reckless disregard for the truth, right?
Yeah, it's either they did not want to know the truth or they found out the truth and ignored it. And it's going to be one or the other. And as soon as we finish this discovery process, there may be a very new landscape in this case, and that's what we're expecting.
But look at what happened in this case. As soon as the Viola employees saw that the police were getting ready to raid, the supervisor in charge of the operation said, "Let me show you our paperwork. We are legal. Please let me show you our paperwork." They ignored her. She kept asking, "Look at the paperwork." They kept ignoring her. And so,
additionally,
this all could have been avoided if all they did was read the paperwork.
How about this? I had a similar situation with someone that's operating under Rule 19. And this Burrell opinion later on, calling it an entitlement, don't call it a temporary, just makes it this much stronger. But because we're calling this a license, it's not a temporary license, it's a license. Mm-hmm. There is inherent within that licensing process immunity.
Right.
So there's no qualified immunity for the popo. It's an immunity from any of this shit. Jurisdiction, from arrest, from taking over their body, physically prosecuting them, or penalty of any kind. I mean, it is explicit in the MMFLA.
Correct.
And I don't want to burst your bubble because listen, I'm totally jealous of the first, the carving out new law and stuff like that. But I did take a case on the immunity issue of the MMFLA to the Court of Appeals of Michigan, in this case out of Washtenaw County, and the trial court denied it, making a finding that she made a finding I didn't prove something, whatever it was, and the Court of Appeals realized that the standard she'd applied to this was not the appropriate standard and did not really let us have a hearing to establish it, so they reversed her ruling and remanded it for a hearing on the issue of the immunity arising out of the MMFLA.
Got it.
However, you guys know this reform prosecutor in Washtenaw County, Eli Savage. You ever heard of him? Do you guys have any extreme reform prosecutors? Maybe me.
All of them.
I mean, reformists, because this guy.
Yeah,
You
have one in Philly.
All right.
You have one in Baltimore. You have one in Kansas City. You have them in various parts of the.
So this guy.
You had one in Dallas.
This guy in Washtenaw County, after 41 years of the county prosecutor being in office, he comes in and says, "This is what I'm doing. Marijuana, don't bring me any cases. Psilocybin, acid, don't bring me any cases. I don't want them. I'm not going to sign them. Sex cases, permissive, consensual sex worker cases, I don't want them. Don't bring them to me." I mean, he just I'm saying, you've heard the pitch of the progressive.
This is exactly what Marilyn Mosby has done in Baltimore.
Is it working? Mm-hmm. I mean, did he live up to it?
I think it is allocating police resources in much better spaces. Now, do we still have issues with those types of nuisance crimes? Yes. But I support making sure that we are prioritizing our police resources into areas where we have serious need. Here in Baltimore City, we get over 300 murders a year in a city that has almost less than 600,000 people. So, yeah, I will sacrifice, prosecution of sex workers, prosecution of low-level misdemeanors for, concentration on repeat violent offenders and people that are, really doing serious harm to our neighborhoods.
Well, but Malcolm, there's a balance.
Correct.
That has to be drawn, because the unintended consequence of this kind of reform, many people argue, is that the quality of life in communities goes down when we permit these kinds of offenses to flourish.
Right. Public health.
And so how do you do both? How do you say this isn't a law enforcement priority correctly, but at the same time permit people, by dint of not prosecuting them for the crimes they continue to commit, to do stuff that makes people not want to go outside, not want to sit on the front steps, diminish the quality of life because people are getting high everywhere, because the user is being protected because it's an addiction. And so how do you balance the two conflicting needs? And history has taught us that if you're not careful, reforms backfire for this reason.
Understood. I would say this, though, from the position that we're at right now, especially in Michigan, there was a statistic that 40% of the crime lab's budget was spent on testing marijuana. The next sentence the lab person said was, "That's why we can't get to the rape kits that are on the shelf still." Okay.
Well, yes, but look, let's understand the police attitude and appetite for keeping marijuana illegal.
That's what I'm saying.
It is the most invasive search in the world, the search for marijuana, because you have the right to look in every crack, crevice, nook, space,
nook and cranny.
Yeah, and so it's a gateway drug to the police. It's the gateway into searching.
It's a gateway investigation, right?
And you might have a green tongue. And you might have a green tongue at the end of the day. Now, I didn't know.
So the police have this extraordinarily invasive tool, stopping people and checking for marijuana. If you smell it, they bust you. They search your whole car. If they see it, they search your whole car, search everything about you, look in the closed containers of the car. I mean, it's outrageous boon for law enforcement. And if you do it disproportionately in the black community, which is why we have all this reform in the first place, then you criminalize the entire community.
Yeah.
The Planet Green Trees Show.